He woke before the others, not because he couldn't sleep. He'd been awake most of the night already. But the ritual had a time, and the time was now. He washed his face in cold water, put on a clean uniform, the white headband, the hachimaki he had folded it the night before. He tied it carefully, not rushed, the same way you do something when you know it's the last time. There was a ceremony before the briefing, small cups of sake. No one spoke very much. The base commander said some words about honor, about the emperor, about what they were about to do for Japan. The boys listened. Most of them were 19. A few were 20. One or two had turned 21. They had been training for 40 hours. This is not a story about heroes or monsters. It is the story of what happens when a country runs out of options and reaches for its young men. It happened once. It could have happened anywhere. By the autumn of 1944, Japan was losing the Pacific in a way that could not be explained away. The great carrier fleet that had bombed Pearl Harbor 3 years earlier was gone, sunk, or crippled at Midway, at the Philippine Sea, in the hundreds of engagements that had slowly, relentlessly pushed the war back toward the Japanese home islands. American bombers were now reaching Japanese cities. The supply lines were cut. The oil was running out. In October, a vice admiral named Takejiro Onishi arrived at an airbase in the Philippines. He had been given command of what remained of the First Air Fleet, around 100 aircraft, mostly outdated, flown by pilots with less than 100 hours of flight time, against a U.S. naval force with 1,500 planes. He looked at the numbers, and he arrived at a conclusion that has haunted military historians ever since. The only way to guarantee a hit was to put the pilot inside the plane that hit. The name they chose was Shinpu Takatai, Special Attack Unit. The Western press would call them Kamikaze, Divine Wind, after the storms that had scattered Mongol invasion fleets 8 centuries earlier. They needed volunteers. The way you asked for volunteers in the Imperial Japanese military in 1944 was this. You lined up a unit of men, and you asked who was willing to give their life for the emperor. You asked in front of everyone. The officers watched. The men next to you watched. Nearly every hand went up. The historians who have studied this moment are careful about the word voluntary. Some pilots wrote in their diaries that they genuinely believed. Others wrote things that read differently: the weight of the group, the watching eyes, the impossibility of being the one who didn't raise his hand. What they shared, almost universally, was youth. The average age was 20. Most were university students, drafted when the war began consuming the educated class. The training program was 40 hours. For context, a standard Japanese naval pilot in 1941 trained for 600 hours before being cleared for combat. By 1944, conventional pilots were getting around 100. The kamikaze pilots got 40. They were taught to take off, to fly in formation, to navigate to a target ship, to identify the best angle of attack, steep enough to be hard to shoot down, shallow enough to maintain control until the last second. They were not taught to land. There was no reason to. Some of the pilots had barely left the ground before they were assigned to missions. There are records of boys who had soloed, flown alone for the first time, and within 2 weeks were taxiing toward a runway that led to a one-way ocean. The cruelty of it is quiet. It doesn't announce itself. It's just the curriculum written on paper, missing a section. The night before a mission, the pilots were given certain things. Sake, a special meal, sometimes food they hadn't tasted since childhood, ingredients that had disappeared from ordinary life years ago. Writing paper and time. What they wrote was not, in most cases, the propaganda the military wanted. The official letters, the ones approved and published, spoke of duty and the emperor and the pride of dying well. The actual letters were different. One pilot, 20 years old, wrote to his father, "I was happy. Please don't grieve too long." Another wrote to his younger brother, 11 years old, and told him to study hard, eat properly, listen to their mother. They wrote about wanting to taste their mother's cooking one more time, about a girl they had seen once and never spoken to, about the mountain near their hometown and what it looked like in autumn. They wrote the way people write, when they know it's the last thing they will ever say. At dawn, they walked to the aircraft. The plane assigned to a kamikaze pilot was typically a Zero fighter. Strapped beneath each wing, a 250-kilogram bomb, enough fuel in the tank for a one-way flight. Some pilots were handed a small branch of cherry blossoms before they climbed into the cockpit. Some tied it to the instrument panel. Some tucked it into their jacket. Takeoff was quiet. The engines were warm. The runway fell away beneath them, out over the Pacific, descending toward the American fleet below. The U.S. Navy had adapted combat air patrols, radar picket ships positioned 50 miles out, anti-aircraft guns that could fill the sky with shrapnel. Many were shot down before they reached a target. Some made it through. What the last minutes looked like from inside that cockpit, the altimeter unwinding, the ship growing in the windshield, the controls growing heavy, that is something we can only read in the letters they left behind. The ones where they said goodbye in the only way that was left to them. Not with speeches, not with ceremony. With, "I was happy. I hope you don't grieve too long." Between October 1944 and August 1945, Japan sent approximately 860 kamikaze pilots against the Allied fleet. 19% hit their target. 34 ships were sunk. Hundreds were damaged. Nearly 5,000 American sailors were killed. Tens of thousands more were wounded. The attacks forced the U.S. Navy to fundamentally redesign how it operated, moving carriers further from the coast, adding radar pickets, accepting that some ships would simply be lost. Japan held out 10 more months, and then 2 cities were gone in 2 mornings, and the war ended, and the pilots who hadn't flown yet were told to stand down. Some wrote that they felt relief. Others wrote that they felt something they didn't have a word for. The letters weren't all delivered. Some families never knew what their sons had written. Some received letters years after the war, found in archives, in lockers, in the pockets of uniforms that came home without the men. They were 19. They wrote about cherry blossoms and younger brothers, and the mountain near home in autumn. They were just kids. If this kind of history stays with you, you know where to find more. If this felt like history, subscribe. More stories, more weight.